So Evangeline, maybe you can explain more regarding the immersion cooling and what are the differences between the one phase and two phases, and how are they typically used?
I'd love to. So first, let's talk about immersion cooling. So as a method, immersion cooling requires two different ways to cool computers and electronics. And the difference really starts around the dielectric liquid that we decide to use in that immersion. So that's why we need to talk about what would be called the single phase immersion cooling first, and also what was called two phase immersion cooling. And lastly, we'll talk about direct to chip. We need to understand the differences between each immersion cooling technique to recognize which would be better depending on the application and the needs of the data center. The two types of immersion cooling work by submerging the entire servers into a liquid coolant. In single phase, the coolant remains liquid the entire time. And while in two phase, the coolant also transitions to gas. And then lastly, direct to chip cooling works by pumping liquid coolant through a metal plate that connects to a processor. And with direct to chip, it can be one phase, it could have glycol, or in the case of two phase, waterless cooling, flexible tubes bring a safe, non flammable dielectric fluid directly to the processing chip. So the fluid then absorbs the heat by turning into vapor, which then carries the heat out of the IT equipment. No water is used in the system. So the equipment is protected, therefore, from any corrosion and other water-related threats that there could be. And there's really no more direct method for dissipating and removing heat than that. So immersion cooling or direct to chip, their main goal is just to reject the heat from the processors and chips. So you need to transfer the heat out of the system with a heat exchanger like Danfoss's microplate and microchannel heat exchangers, plus complementary valves, sensors, VFDs, and pumps.